mean musically, and then what happened that stopped that train going down the track?
Well, I'll go back to 1957. I'd been in the Air Force about 4 years, and I got out of the Air Force in October. And of course, my hometown's Withville, Virginia, which is in the southwestern part of the state. And a group that I worked with before I went into the military was the Lonesome Pine Fiddlers. And at that time, they was on WLSI in Pikeville, Kentucky. So I told my mom and dad, I said, I think I'll go up and visit with Ezra and Curly Ray and the gang. You know, I'd been around home about a month. And of course, there wasn't nothing happening. And so I went up there to visit them, and I got a call at the studio one day, and the guy on the board in there, he kind of pecked on the glass and, you know, held his hand up like, you know, telephone. So I went around and answered the phone. It was Jimmy Martin, and I don't know how he knew I was there. I don't know how he knew I was out of the Air Force, but anyway, he made the call. He wanted me to go to work for him, in which in the Air Force I had a country and western band. You know, we played the Sergeant's Club and the Airman's Club and things like that. Of course, I was on flying status, and when I was on base, we'd pick, you know, but lots of times I was gone because I was an airborne radio operator. And, you know, we're supplying the troops in Korea, you know, at that time. But anyway, to get on with the story, I went to work for him, and I hadn't played a mandolin since that's just a kid. But I told him that, and he said, well, it'll all come back to you. So I got to working on it. Of course, J.D. Crowe was there, and he helped me a lot with what Jimmy expected. And so that was in November, and in December, Jimmy always went to Sneedville in Hancock County, Tennessee, home for Christmas, and he wanted me to go home with him and meet his folks, which I did. And that's when I first saw Edra, my wife, and got acquainted with her. And of course, you know, her family sort of frowned because I was a hillbilly, you know, musician. But anyway, that's another story. We won't do that today. But anyway, I got acquainted with his family, and I worked with him through, I was off and on. I quit one time and I went back, and I worked with him to the winter of '63. But in the summertime of that year, 1963, we was off for a few days, and me and my wife and I, we lived out in Donaldson out of Nashville, and we drove up to visit her mom and her dad, and it was church meeting there, and the little church where they all went to, where she was saved, my wife. And so she wanted me to go to church with her, and you know, you try to keep peace in the family. Going to church was the furthest thing in my mind. I was totally flat out not interested in going to church, but to keep peace in the family, and so she wouldn't be puffed up at me the whole duration of our visit, I went to church with her, and first time, of course, I'd ever been there. I only knew her uncle led singing, her sister, and probably 2 or 3 more people. I didn't know many people there, but didn't know the preacher and nothing like that. But anyway, they sung 2 or 3 songs, and this was on a Saturday evening. And the preacher got to preaching, and it brought conviction to my heart. And I got to where I couldn't hold my head up. And they had it was an old church, and they had these old pine boards in the floor, and I was sitting there trying to count the knots in those boards. I wouldn't hold my head up, because I felt like everybody in that building was looking at me, and I literally could not hold my head up. I felt like I was on trial, and I was on a pinnacle, and everybody was looking at me, condemning me. I just had this great condemnation feeling in my heart, and I was just devastated. Well, after a while, they said a lot of things and invited people to come and pray, and I ignored that. All I wanted to do was get out of there. And